bit of background for both of them, so I don't have to really introduce these two of the most leading African American talents in the world. And I would say some of the ideas you today originated from these two famous gentlemen, Mr. Vernon Brock and Mr. Sam Sadono.
So much of the dancing that's going on now and doing the girls' parts. And after all, it's really the Latin dancing nowadays has sort of gotten to be outrageous with style. So sometimes we do get confused as to who's going to spin on it. Sam and I have been asked to teach a lecture in current trends in Latin. We're going to diversify on that a bit because I think trends, the word trend, if you think of it in terms of fashion, for example, it's usually very temporary. Some trends in dancing become almost part of the technique. Trends can be a passing fancy that one couple does and another couple likes, and it's on for a while, and then it becomes old-fashioned very shortly. So a trend could be something, for example, a trend that has become a technique is, in my estimation, what's happening to samba. There was a trend of doing the hip action feeling in samba, and there was a time, Sam and I competed in samba, maybe some of the other coaches and advisors, that if you didn't bounce, I don't mean pulse, I mean bounce, you were just not doing samba. So everything was 1, 2, 1, 2, and then it was sort of outrageous when we started to let our hips settle, and we got a little bit of that pumping action, and that has become the feeling of pulsing bass leg and getting the feeling up in the hips now. So this, I have a feeling, is a trend that has become, or probably will maintain itself as now a technique in our samba. I personally like it better than the other. I think it feels more rhythmic. I think it has that feeling. So when we talk about trends, you've got to know that it needs to be a passing fancy, it can be a flight that just happens one day. One of our couples does a movement which does this. That could happen this week, or we may have it for 10 years. You never can tell. It works now, it works for them, and a trend could be something that's 2 couples like, and then 6 amateur couples that want to be terrific copy it, and then it goes on from there. So trend is really Sam, do you have anything to say about that?
I'm being late twice. Late, see how nice? Is it my turn? Okay. We were trying to discuss what we felt the trend, what's the trend? We were thinking, well, what we saw this weekend. Well, this guy, they're doing that. We said, that's the trend. I said, well, they're not really here to hear what we think the trend is. They're here to hear what we're teaching as what the trend might be. Because a lot of times people will say to Vernon and I, well, how did you get so successful? Because 15 years ago, we went over to England doing our own thing. Another planet. We were rippling and jumping. He's doing knee rolls and dead, So when we went over there, our success was because we did our own thing and we did it well.
Now, mind you, it didn't go down too well.
No.
Everywhere, but it did certainly make a note for us that I think we did it something out of determination of our own sense of ideas. I did it partly out of ignorance. I hadn't been over there before and just put routines together. I thought, well, we're showing. And I just learned that a fan is that part where you go out to here, and not the part where you go forward to there. I was excited about all I learned in technique. But since I wasn't really up on the technique, I really did outrageous routines. And that, I would like to say, became a trend, but not right away. It was so controversial that I think it just took a while that it was done in Europe until it became used to seeing the outrageous movements and the more rhythmic things. And then once it comes from their own garage door, it seems to be a little more acceptable in Europe that can be done. It sounds like I'm patting us on the back, but we did have a lot to do with that influence. And part of what's happening now in Latin pop very important now, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but I think the Latin routines are staged to the audience now. I think it's almost as though everyone's doing their little dim to the audience. I like it because what makes me work in a competition is an electricity either from my partner or the audience. I like the feeling of the cha-chas playing to the audience, or the sambas as you move by, pointing to the audience. I've been doing that so many times this week, I can't tell you. But I do think that not just winking, I think the staging of the routines is important. For example, you can take a line in an entrance, and if you did it diagonally this way, and then sat and did your hip gyration that way, and then you did your up and down that way, it doesn't have really, you couldn't get into that very much, could you? It has an entirely different feeling if I do it this way and do my hip gyration there to face you. So the direction that you face has a lot to do. I mean, the pulling of the audience into your routine is important. It used to be that we used to say, hey, you've got audience on 4 sides, so it doesn't matter where you face, they're going to find you. The only person's obligation in the room to find you is the judges. They have to find you. And you need to do whatever makes your routines work better for you emotionally. And I like the playing off the audience. I think it is, in my estimation, a little too carried away when they dance at your feet. They're right here doing this. And it's kind of exciting for these 4 people, but those people can't see it. These people tend to look past it. So in doing that, my advice is to stay back off the audience a little bit. But I do like that feeling. I like the staging of the routine so that your lines can be seen into. Now, if I were doing a line with Sammy in my routine, in a rumba, and I have a long check line, and I do it, say, on this side, say I did it this way, that's not the prettiest way for that to be done for you to enjoy it. And that's a simple movement. It just simply has more lines. If you were on the other foot or other hand or whatever, and then that side. So if you can keep that in mind, especially your side-by-side movements, you need to be on a positive direction to an audience, side-by-side or either moving towards the audience or parallel to the audience. But I like that feeling. Do you have any comment or any question about that? It's a little bit involved to talk about. We're going to have a choreography session later on this week, and later on today rather, and I'm going to give some examples of pros and cons, how to and what not to do, and entrances and things of that sort. But I do feel that if I were to name a trend, that's certainly a trend now. Dance in certain dances like cha-cha to the audience, to win the audience. The judge has very little time to judge you. I don't know if you really have thought about it, but wait until you become adjudicators if you have never judged even an amateur championship. And you have 12, 16 couples on the floor, and you have to divide a minute and a half up to find those couples and to evaluate them. It doesn't leave you a lot of time. And I think the impact of what you do is enhanced by dancing in such a positive direction to the audience. The judges will find you. And don't feel because you've only faced this way and Mr. Urban and Mr. Eggleton are there and the other judges are there, they can't find you, they can't find you. So it's not necessary to get in the middle of the floor and dance so that everyone can see you. And do remember that consider a line of dance in general as, consider yourself on a stage that you're facing up front when you do a Latin routine. And try to make as much of it, and I'm not saying everything, face the audience you're nearest. And you'll find that a combination, if I'm rounding a corner this way, I will suddenly now become involved with this side of the audience instead of being involved with the audience I'm leaving. So if you kind of keep that in mind, certain dances move around the room, and that's an important thing. It can't always happen, but when you can, it makes it easier to see, cleaner to look at. And
I'm being very accommodating. No, can I go for a minute?
go.
Okay, no. The thing is, what we want to do today is, number one, when we go to competitions, a lot of times these couples come up and they say, when can we get a lesson? When can we do this? And as some of these couples know, if we're not in that area, or if we're not wherever we are, you never really get a lesson from us. And Vernon and I judge a lot, okay? And I know you like our opinion, but a lot of times it's not possible to get lessons from us because we're always on the road or traveling. So I said to Vernon, why don't we, like I said, we had step what we thought was a trend 15 years ago, so I said, why don't we teach them how to have their own minds and how, I mean, you're actually the ones who are setting the trend. I mean, the couples that are dancing. So I said, why don't we show them little ways of getting into things and how to do a fan and making it so that you can take it home and see how we've developed it, so that when you can't get people like us, or you don't want to wait a year, sometimes for people like us to get around, so that when you're on your own, you say, well, yeah, this is the way Sam and Vernon got into this step. Let's see if we can do it this way. Like I said, our lecture was going to be on the unexpected, or the element of surprise. I mean, these are the things that we want to get across.
I think when you think about what makes a routine exceptional, aside from the wonderful dancing, I don't think when you look at the professional division out there, you can't say you saw any bad dancing. They have to choose and pick and sort and weed out what on that given night is their preferred couple. But I think that what makes it interesting, if you're watching, I just can't get into it. Reading one now, I can't get into it. About the fourth chapter, I set it down, it's been 2 months and I haven't really gotten into it. I picked up another book in between. The very first paragraph, it said, a little girl sat eating an ice cream cone, not realizing that it was the very last ice cream cone she ever enjoyed in her life. And I thought, wow, I wonder what's going to happen to this kid. So I went on. I mean, I zapped through that first chapter, and that whole first chapter kept drawing me in. And I think choreography has to draw you in. I think that there is no dispelling the need for excellent technique, the quality of the basics, the good things that make everything work. I mean, drawing you in and doing something badly technically is not what we're after. We're after adding the icing to the cake, taking that wonderful feeling that you have for all the hard work you've done in your basics to get it right, to get the legs straight, to the hips settled. And then, after you do something like that, drawing them into something unexpected, maybe. Something that unexpected doesn't mean that you flop on the floor, roll over on your stomach, and do a split and lay on your left ear. Sometimes unexpected can be as simple as going into a fan and doing something following a fan that's a little bit different. Now, I like the aggressive unexpected. I think that's it's got volume, doesn't it? And volume tends to draw the eye. And once the eye is drawn, you tend to have to assess who you're looking at. I mean, if you're waiting for a couple to start, and the other couples are waiting around, and the couple that starts first, you generally go, boom, and look at it. Simply because, not that you have to be the first one out of the hatch, but if a couple tends to walk forward like that, and another couple is doing something that has something big, to the front of it, you tend to maybe watch the big part of that and wait. Not that only big works, but I'm just saying that I think you have to understand that if this were not a competition with everyone on the floor at one time, you could afford to finesse a lot more than you do. You could afford to take 2 measures to bring a hand down. And you could afford to do something like that for a longer period of time. But we get definitely afraid no one's going to look at us that long. And if the judge only has 6 measures to look at, I want to show him I can dance, not that I can pose. So we do not know the ratio to go between how much you do the basics, how much you do the gregarious things. I look together competition routines like I would a show routine. I think it has to have dancing, and it has to have an element of surprise, it has to have something rhythmic, it has to have something quiet every once in a while. So Sam and I would like to talk about it, maybe do what we call an element of surprise, or the unexpected movement from something basic, and then develop it on into something more aggressive. Now this sort of gets into my lecture later on choreography, but we can just expand it by bringing you more into the group. So you'll actually end up having almost 2 sessions that relate the current trends and ideas into the choreography idea. We want to get you up and have you dance too, because I think Sir Douglas said Sam and I can talk to you all day. If you get up and dance 6 measures, it's worth more than hearing 6 hours. You get to try it today. Anything else?
I'm being back.
Now you can read it. Let's talk a little bit about, for example, if I were going to fan position, say I'm doing cha-cha, and I do my 2, 3. I'm going to do my 4 and of the fan. 4 and. Okay, now, instead of stepping to the fan, if we both step and rotate on 1, and then do our little split break or anchor break of 3. Now, without getting too fancy, if we just spun into a New Yorker action, and 1. That's an unexpected look because if I just done the ready to go to the fan, I go 2, 3, 4, and 1. 4, and 1. And it has the look of maybe going to go into the fan, but it has that little element of a quick turn on the end and then a split break on the end and then a turn after that. We'd like you to get learn this so you get the idea of what we're talking about. Come on now. You haven't danced today yet, have you? Take some wine. Anyone?
You're gonna dance when you get on, I'm gonna stand there and video.
Let's assume that we've done the first part of the hip twist. 2, 3, 4, and 1, in whatever manner you choose to do it. You're ready to step across to your fan position. So this is where the movement starts. Take the 2, 3, 4, and 1. As a matter of fact, you know, if we did this way, you understand it better. Okay, here's Gallup here. Okay, we're going to move forward so you have more room. Girl step across to the left foot on 2, 3. So gentleman breaks back and 2, 3. Now do your 4 and 1 as you ordinarily would. Ready, go. 4 and 1. Now all you're going to do, on that 1 count, the lady's going to rotate to her left, a full turn, face man. 1. Okay? Now you're in that position to do the open facing. You can have any amount of gregarious things you can do from here, but let's do the split breaks or merengue breaks where we go up, up, down, down, okay, with either a close or a cross, and we just simply spin to the right, 4 and 1, gentleman's left, 4 and 1, take the joining inside hand for a New Yorker action, you're ready to go. So you're taking this hand because you would be ready now to do 2 and 3 or 2, 3, 4 and 1. Let's do that again. From the crossbody lead, okay, going to back position, ladies left foot, gentlemen ready to break back. For the gentleman's part, sample dance, it goes 2, 3, 4, and spin, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Now, that is oh my gosh, that would usually come from there. You expect to see 3, 4, and 1. You just are conditioned to see it. And when we see the 1 go into that, it comes out to be something that maybe is not an audience applause here, but it's a cheers and that cluttering, that was the dancing kind of stuff. Okay? Let's try one. Ladies left, and go. 2, 3, 4, and spin. 2, 3, 4, and 1. Good. Once again. Arm in across the foot. Now let's talk about a minute about trends. There is a trend, and for example, because of the nature of the dance in cha-cha, to do your split breaks a little more staccato. Tick, 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 tick. There's a feeling in samba of doing them a little more circular and rolling. So that could be called style, it could be called trend. Who knows how they're going to be done by next week? Keep your eyes open. If you like it, do it. If it doesn't look good, all you don't. And if it doesn't, you do it. When doing it, it's certainly going to become a trend. Okay, let's try one more time. I think this should have more staccato action. Ready? And 2, 3, 4, and 1. 2, 3, 4, and 1. Good. Go ahead.
You know, when I do this, like during the competition this weekend, not that I have time that much to look at feet, but when I did, I'm very much into toes turned out. Okay, now, for balance, okay? Now, when I'm here, okay, and I break back my toe, this is my two turned out, this is turned out. My toes are always there, turned out, even after I'm gonna spin here to catch my balance, and I'm not like this. It's toe turned out and I'm into this hip. How many times I saw check this weekend? I don't know how they could do it. The guy did this. You see? Instead of this. So basically, if you always look at me here, my feet are always, no matter what, turned out at some degree. 2, 3, 4, and 1. Even here. Top, top. Here, top, top, top. So get away from hitting these things like this.
Have you ever watched a new student dance, try to dance here? And they're doing
judge a lot of American style competitions, you know, here. And they'll do a box step like this. Okay, what's the lead me into the box? I'll be able to show you there. Lead me into a box step. So we did this. They have wonderful cubic motion. And they get out on their own and it just sort of disappears until they fall into the back of the picks up again. I think